ladies and gentlemen, that was The Thin Red Line by the great British heavy metal band Saxon. And goodness me, we have to hold the line these days as we're talking about in this programme. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday, it's Scotland, it's 1 p.m, and we're back in original form. The legible, credible, inevitable storm, which is a force for good, coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. And people are coming in, and I'm going to give you a wave to Marilyn and a wave to Karen. Now, it's been a troublesome week in many ways. We had a bad experience as a nation on Sunday when we were told that 54% of people in Scotland were now for independence. Well, I don't know if that's really true or not. I'd be very interested in what your thoughts are on this matter. And we're going to be talking about that today and why this might be so, and if there's anything that we can do about this, because that's very serious. If things are shifting in that direction, we cannot allow that trend to continue. Why is that trend going that way? What can be done about it? That's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And if you've got any ideas, please fire them in. Any comments on what can be done, please do fire them in. Now, I'm going to also talk about a great new thing that's happened with us here in the office. Our first published book arrived this week and it's on sale now. Give Megan a wave, give Duncan a wave there. And thank you for coming in on Twitter also. Before I talk about the wee book, before I talk about what on earth is happening with the opinion polls, I'm going to talk about the continuing COVID carry-on, or carry-on COVID, as it's almost certainly descending into pantomime now. And first, what I want to do is give you some idea about what the actual law is on wearing face masks, because people have said to us, do we have to wear face masks everywhere? Well, I've got the gen here. I've downloaded it from the government legislation itself, and I'm just going to talk to you very briefly about that. It was made law yesterday, Friday, that you have to wear a face mask in a shop. Now, according to the relevant legislation, which is the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions Scotland Amendment Number 7 Regulations 2020, this is an amendment to the original law, and it requires you to wear it in a shop. However, shop does not mean the following, where you can wear, where you don't have to wear masks, okay? So you do not have to wear a mask if you go into a restaurant, including restaurants and dining rooms in hotels or members' clubs. You do not have to wear a mask in a cafe, including workplace canteens. You do not have to wear a mask in bars, including bars in hotels or members' clubs. You do not have to wear a mask in public houses, by which is meant pubs. And you do not have to wear a mask in banks, or building societies or credit unions or other such places which transmit money. So the good news is that if you're going to rob a bank, it is not yet compulsory to wear a mask. So that's maybe that's bad news for bank robbers. But I jest, of course, because this is becoming a pantomime. You know, the excellent Assembly member at the London Assembly, Peter Whittle, he made a tweet last week, and he was just commenting about London, and he said tubes and trains are deserted even now. Around 50% of places that could be open still are closed, and yet regulations about face masks are actually getting tighter. Virus infections and deaths plummeted weeks ago. There's no rhyme or reason to this. as he pointed out in his tweet. And that's correct. Well, there is a rhyme to it, and the rhyme to it is that it is political. Okay, it's no longer about a pandemic, it's about a political pantomime. And it's no longer about science, it's almost descending now into superstition. And it's a pantomime because if you're going to open up a shop and you say, yes, it's okay, we can all go back to shops now, but be aware, if you go into a shop, it might kill you. How many people want to enjoy their shopping experience with that floating in the back of their head? So it's the most ridiculous thing to open up shops and yet then tell everybody they're in danger if they go into a shop and they have to wear a mask that they've never worn before. As I've said before, I shop regularly in the local supermarket. There's hundreds of people in there. Maybe 5% were wearing masks prior to yesterday. And the actual people who work in the shops were not wearing masks. And none of them are falling down with disease. And they haven't done so. So they're not likely to do so now. So why are we being compelled to wear this mask in this crazy carry-on COVID scenario? Well, it's political, and here in Scotland, we have the Nicola Sturgeon Show, which is on every day for half an hour or for an hour or whatever. And she's loving that power. She's got her own TV programme every day. She's got her own party political broadcast. Ali is watching, Lee's watching. Give you a wave, Peter. Give you a wave. Thanks for waving in. So, and that's a show, that's a TV show that she's going to continue to keep running. She's going to continue to keep running that for as long as she can. If she can keep running that Nicola Sturgeon show, the Carry On COVID show, until May next year at the Holyrood election, then she will do so. She will do so. Because it's a stage for her to perform and for her to dominate Scotland from. And the BBC, unfortunately, are giving her this stage, which she is enjoying and which she's loving and which she cannot believe she's got this stage. You know, it's really ridiculous. What needs to happen is that the plug needs to be pulled from that. And I suggest to the BBC that they no longer amplify her message, because she's going to stand there as long as you give her a platform, and she's just going to continue to make up stuff, make up controversy, so long as she can stand there. I mean, today it's you have to wear masks in shops. Next week it will be, if we're going that way into town, we have to walk on that side of the pavement. If we're going that way, everybody has to walk on that side of the pavement. And then it will be, actually, could you walk backwards? Because if you walk backwards when somebody is coming, then the COVID particles won't go into your face, they'll just go into the back of your hair. And Imperial College London has told us that, in fact, COVID in your hair is not as dangerous as COVID in your face. You know, and people go, oh, okay, we'll do that. We'll walk backwards. We'll walk on this side of the street. I mean, it's just breeding. It's breeding fear. And you know what? I've said before, I feel sorry for the little children, right? Because when I was growing up, it was like, oh, brilliant, summer holidays, switch on the telly, cartoons, followed by Noel Edmonds' Swap Shop or something like that. I mean, what do little kids do today? They switch on the telly, it's Nicola Sturgeon. They're like, Mummy, make it go away. Make it go away. You know, you get a bit older, you switch on the telly, you're expecting Frank Boff's Grandstand with Racing from Leinster. What do you get? The Nicola Sturgeon show. Or maybe you're one of these guys that used to watch Dickie Davis's World of Sport and you like watching the wrestling from Wolverhampton. What do you get? The Nicola Sturgeon show. It's like, for crying out loud. You know, it's gone too far. It's gone too far, and it's gone beyond a joke. And it needs to stop. And who can make it stop? Our politicians can make it stop by saying, look, let's just forget this now. Let's just move on from this political pantomime. Because it's becoming now about domination. Of course, if you're a Scottish nationalist, if you're one of these Scottish nationalists, you love it. You love it because it's like, look, all the people in Scotland doing the same thing and dressing the same way. Isn't that wonderful? You know, you're really into that if you're a Scottish nationalist. But if you're like a free-thinking individual, which is what most Unionists are, then you don't like that at all, and you don't like being told what you can and cannot do. So it's very, very serious. It's very, very serious, and it has serious implications for the future, because it means that we are being trained, mentally trained, to go along with things that we're being told to do, that really impact our lives in a big way. Tommy, give you a wave there. Somebody's just ordered the wee book. Thank you for that. We're going to talk about the wee book in a minute. It's been selling massively since we advertised it last night. I can't believe how many copies we've sold. Karen is watching. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so, and you know what? Some of you might notice my shirt and you're like, what's that about? Well, does anybody know the significance of this shirt and why I'm wearing it today to talk to you about mask wearing? If you understand the significance of this t-shirt, fire that in, okay? And we will send one of our badges to the first person who comes in who understands the significance of this t-shirt to what I'm talking about today with the COVID thing. I'll explain it in a few minutes. So, absolutely, the plug needs to be pulled on the Nicola Sturgeon show, on the Carry On COVID show. It has to be pulled, the plug has to be pulled, and then that will just mean that Nicola Sturgeon can get back to fussing about and complaining about other things instead of this ridiculous stuff that we've been forced to. By the way, we've all got to wear masks for 3 weeks. They're going to look at it again after 3 weeks, and they'll decide whether or not we have to wear masks, or, as I said last week, whether or not we also have to wear our pants on top of our trousers, whether we have to walk backwards down the street when somebody's coming. No doubt all these things will be told about in future, and I do hope I'm not giving them ideas, because believe me, they will action some of these if they thought they could get away with it. And that's what politicians do. They do what they can get away with, and when they can't get away with it anymore, they move on to something else that they think they can get away with. And here Nicola Sturgeon wants to keep this Carry On COVID thing going until next May, because it gives her a perfect platform to stand there as Mother Sturgeon in front of the country, preaching and dominating Scotland in her way, and complaining about the centre, complaining about the British government not doing enough. So it's a perfect opportunity, and she doesn't get any politicians opposing her on that platform. It wouldn't be so bad if she stood there and you had somebody like myself or others just saying, no, you're wrong, we're going to change it, that's rubbish, etc., etc. No, she just stands there, like, and everybody just listens to her, genuflects to her. It's really, really disturbing stuff that's going on at the moment. Anyway, there's a lot of positive stuff going on as well, so don't be too worried. Okay, I'm going to explain the purpose of why I'm wearing this shirt today. And nobody seems to have yet got the point of it, but I actually think that this should become the new symbol of the Covid Non-Conformists. Do you remember the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which came out in 1977? It was quite a mystical film, and it was an exciting film. And if you're going to watch it, don't bother watching the director's cut. That just goes on too long, and there's lots of boring bits in it. Just watch the normal film that came out in the cinemas, and it's really well edited, and it's really exciting. Anyway, it tells the story of Roy Neary, who was played by Richard Dreyfuss, and he was kept getting visions, strange mystical visions of a strange shape that he couldn't figure out. And then one day on the television, he heard that there had been a train wreck that had spilled toxic gas at this place, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And he recognised that as the vision that he had seen in his mind. And he had to get there. But when he got there, the military had sealed it all off, and you couldn't get in unless you were wearing a mask. But he knew he was being played by this. And there's a classic scene where he and others who had also had this mystical vision were sitting in the back of an army van. They'd been rounded up and they were wearing their masks, and he knew there's something not right here, so he took his mask off and he took an intake of breath and he realised that everything was fine. And as he shouted out, he goes, "There's nothing wrong with the air. There's nothing wrong with the air." And he prevailed upon other people that were in the back of the van to take their masks off, join him and make a run for it. And they all ran up to this mountain, not knowing what was going to be there when they got there. And of course, as you will know, the rest of the story was that they climbed up to the top of the mountain, and at the top, the US government had set up a landing zone for the space aliens. So I was very excited back in 1977. That was like amazing stuff. Anyway, I was quite taken by that film, and I visited the USA in 1988. I was part of something called the British University's North American Club, where they would, and I did it twice actually, 2 years, and you would work on boys' camps, and I was cutting the grass, and then after you'd worked there for 8 or 10 weeks, you had some pocket money and you travelled the USA, and that was back in 1988, and somehow I managed, I think I got to Denver, somehow, and then from Denver I got somewhere else, and then I hired a car and I actually went to Devil's Tower. And I ended up sleeping out overnight, just myself, didn't even have a tent or anything. I was at the bottom of Devil's Tower, and I remember getting kicked awake quite literally by a park ranger who's like, "What are you doing here? You're not allowed to do this," because he had seen my car in the car park and he thought, who's here? So he was a nice guy about it, he was fine about it. But I wasn't going to argue with this guy packing this massive, great revolver on his hip. Anyway, I went down and there's a wee shop at the bottom of it, and I bought this t-shirt, Devil's Tower, Wyoming. And the amazing thing is I can still fit into it 32 years later. Anyway, the point there is that was the first thing that I thought about when this COVID mask wearing thing became compulsory. I thought of Roy Neary in the back of the army van, and I thought there's nothing wrong with the air. And I think that Devil's Tower should become the symbol of COVID Non-Conformism. I'm just putting that out there, and that's why I'm wearing this classic t-shirt. By the way, you couldn't climb up to it. Roy Neary, and certainly not Richard Dreyfuss, who played him, could not climb up the side of that. I mean, there's no way anybody was getting up to the top of that. Anyway, whatever one may think about the COVID carry-on, is one thing is for certain. Thank goodness for the British Treasury. Thank goodness for the British Treasury, because without the British Treasury and the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, we would all be in a very bad place. A very bad place. And £4.6 billion has come to Scotland as a consequence of this COVID carry-on. And just another 800 million recently. Now, as of course we know, the Scottish Assembly receives a lot of money from the British Treasury, but don't expect any thanks for it. Don't expect they're going to say, "Oh, thank you for giving us that money, that's really good." No. When you give the Scottish nationalists money, they take it. They take it without thanks. They bank it, and then they pretend that they never received it. And if they will admit that they received it, they will complain that it wasn't enough and that they have the powers to use it. So they're eternally ungrateful. And you always have to remember that when you're dealing with Scottish nationalists. If you give them any money, they will just take it, bank it without thanks, and pretend that they never received it. Lee's saying, "Could you look into making AFFG in white and black?" Yeah, contact us with that idea, Lee, and we'll see what we can do about that. Our t-shirts are on our teespring.com shop. If somebody can just put up that link there to teespring.com, our shop, where you can find, you can't find this t-shirt, but you can find our AFFG t-shirts. Aye, so thank goodness for the British Treasury. In fact, the Sunak himself pointed out a couple of days ago, he said, millions of people in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have been protected by the UK government's economic interventions, and they will be supported by today's plan and jobs. And no nationalist can ignore the undeniable truth, which is that this has only been possible because we are a united kingdom. That's so true. But of course the Scottish nationalists will ignore that undeniable truth. They won't give it any kind of airtime, and they'll say that it's not even true. So, don't look to them to be grateful, but at least keep stating the reality of that. As Karen's got an idea, we're not planning to, Karen, put it that way at the moment. But it's not a bad idea what you're just saying there about actually marketing t-shirts like this. Thank you. That's the teespring.com stores where you can just get our normal AFFG merchandise. Aye, and it was a comment in a newspaper as well, which I read, where it said, if Scotland had left the UK in 2014, we would be facing this virus alone without the financial lifeline guaranteed by pooling and sharing our resources with 61 million other people. The SNP would rather we did not reflect upon these grim realities, for it underlies what a dangerous delusion the party's continuing bid for Scottish separation represents. The Nationalists try to portray the Union as something that holds Scotland back, but the past few months have vividly captured the truth. I like this bit. The Union is the best insurance policy ever devised. That's a good phrase. The Union is the best insurance policy ever devised. We're going to remember that one, and we're going to repeat that one, and we're going to keep putting that into public consciousness. The Union is the best insurance policy ever devised. And goodness me, we know that. If you're self-employed, most of us anyway, if we're self-employed, we've been able to get furloughed, which is amazing, really, when you think about it. There's also been a lot of help to a lot of other people. And our advice to the British government is this money is best coming into Scotland when it's spent directly over the heads of the Scottish nationalists. For example, if you're self-employed, and I can't speak for everybody, but for most people who are self-employed, you go onto HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs website, you fill in your details, and bang, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, HMRC, tax people will pay you directly into your bank account. You don't need to go to Nicola Sturgeon. You don't need any kind of Holyrood office to mediate that. They want to mediate it, which means they want to mess it up. No, you just get the money spent straight to you from the British Treasury. British Treasury into your bank account. That's the way you do it. Don't let the SNP get their hands on it at all. And that stands for when you're following self-employed people, but it also stands for when you're spending money into Scotland. And this is going to happen as we're going into building up infrastructure and trying to get the economy going again. The best way is to find ways of spending money directly from the British government into the bank accounts of companies and people in Scotland, rather than putting it to the Scottish Parliament, who will just misspend it, spend it on their pet projects, spend it on people who only agree with them. They will totally mess it up. So our advice to the British government as we go into this new era post-COVID is spend money directly into Scotland. Don't put it anywhere near the Scottish nationalists in Holyrood, because they will not thank you for it. They will take it without thanks. They will bank it. They'll pretend that they never received it. And if you give it to them, they'll make up excuses that they can't find it anymore, or it wasn't enough, or it never happened, or they don't have the powers to use it, or they'll find some way of being ungrateful for showing that they have no gratitude at all. That's what they have to do. That they have to do that if they are to promote the cause of separation. They have to be eternally ungrateful, because it is only through being eternally ungrateful that they can push the cause of separation. So spend money directly into Scotland. Don't let it go anywhere near the Scottish nationalists. Don't let it go anywhere near them, because they will be eternally ungrateful for it. And if you waste British taxpayers' money and give it to Holyrood, believe me, I've told you, you're wasting it. And you deserve all the brickbats and all the attacks that will come to you from Holyrood, and all the ungratefulness, because that's all you will get from them. You have to give it, you have to find ways of doing it through directly into people's bank accounts, as HMRC does so well, or via the Scottish office, which you're going to have to build up again. Okay, you're going to have to build up the Scottish office, which is the British Parliament in Scotland. It used to have a massive building, which is now run by Nicola, but it used to have that massive building in Waterloo Place in Edinburgh. And now it's reduced to just a few cupboards in a corner in Melville Street in Edinburgh. So you have to build up the Scottish office again to make it, to put it in its proper place, which is as the British Parliament in Scotland. And through the Scottish office, you will then put money safely and securely into Scotland without being bothered by the Scottish nationalists, who will give you absolutely no credit for it, no credit whatsoever. Tommy's saying the SNP's incompetence knows no bounds. Richard's saying it's an immoral philosophy. Well, absolutely, because one for all and all for one is where we stand as British people. We say, and I'm just going to show you the wee book shortly, because it's a wee cracker. It's a wee cracker, but as we say, as British Unionists, we emphasise the values of solidarity, not separation, of unity, not division, of giving, not getting, of all for one and one for all. Okay? And that's what we're saying. Now, people will say, well, why have the polls gone down? And what are your ideas gone up for them? Why is that? You're literally getting paid to stay in bed by the British government. And yet the polls are shifting towards the Scottish nationalists. Why should that be? That's really, really weird. Oh, you'd like to stay at home? Fine. Here's several £1,000s just to do so. Oh, I'm still not voting for you, mate. I'm going to vote for her. What sense does that make? Why should that be happening? You'd think giving people money to do nothing would be a winning message, if ever there was a winning message in politics. You'd think so, but you know what? Politics is not as simple as that. Politics does not always follow logic. It does not always follow reason. And as we say in this programme, we drop a lot of political wisdom. And one of the wise political points that we're going to make to you is that the person who has got the most logic and reason doesn't necessarily get heard. It's the person who is the loudest, the person who is the noisiest. Noise very often triumphs over reason. It's not really right that that should be so. It's wrong, but it's often happening. So if you're still getting paid thousands of pounds to be off work, but you switch on the television and all you hear and all you see is Scottish nationalism, then your brain starts to focus on that. It's very simple. As I was saying earlier, switch on the telly, you're expecting to see racing from Leinster, but you see Nicola Sturgeon. Boom, your mind starts thinking about, oh, maybe she's right, maybe she's got a point. Nobody's contradicting her. Nobody's saying anything else. She's the only politician that I know of. She's the only one I see. She seems to be making sense. Oh, I'll go with her. So that's really why I believe we have a rise in the polls for the Scottish nationalists, because they are the dominant voice, full spectrum domination in Scotland. And others struggle to be heard. And she's sitting in a very good place at the moment, a very good place. She can continue this carry-on COVID show until May next year, by which time there may be no voices left. And by which point she'll have passed a law that if you want COVID to disappear, you have to vote for the Scottish National Party. And that, in fact, the Imperial College London, again, is font of all diswisdom, if that's a word, unwisdom, font of all stuff that is questionable, will have come out with another study saying that we've discovered that people who vote for the Scottish National Party have a less chance of dying from COVID than if you vote for the Tory or Labour parties. And people go, oh, okay then, okay, SNP it is. And you don't think that could happen? Basically, as much of that has happened in other countries in the past. You know, I'm jesting to make the point that compelling people to vote for a political party has been done before in some of these countries that we know about. So are we a long way from that? We're closer to it than we were a few weeks ago. There's no question about that. Somebody says, who is this clown? I think they mean me. And somebody has responded with a guy with his finger on the pulse. Thank you. Paul just fires in a random Ulster is British comment there, which I have to agree with. I'll talk about Ulster in a moment, because today is the 11th of July, which was the date of the Battle of the Boyne. We'll talk about that in British history, this week in British history, which will be coming up later. So why have the polls gone towards Sturgeon? It's because Sturgeon is got full spectrum dominance of the political reality and the media at the moment. And if you want to hear common sense, you have to come to people like A Force for Good and to other people on YouTube. And I recommend that you check out Peter Whittle and everything that he does. He's a really good thinker. I recommend that you check out Neil Oliver, who's regularly now on talk radio. Mike Graham's talk radio program is especially good. You can get that on YouTube. And a few other voices that we have to find outside of the mainstream media these days, because I recommend that you stop watching the news, because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel sad and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own, as Morrissey has sung. And he's so correct on that. And so you have to find alternative forms of information. So if you can find that on Facebook or Twitter even, although Twitter's got its drawbacks, or YouTube for the moment anyway, you can find alternative voices and you can think, thank goodness there's still common sense in the world. Karen's saying the Nicola show is nothing but a daily SNP party political broadcast, and that's so true. Yeah. And we also saw last week as well, we saw some people on the border who were trying to keep out the English. I don't want to go into that too much, but there was an anti-English border protest basically organised by some of the SNP gentlefolk. And one of the activists who was behind the demonstration said that he took his lead from senior SNP figures who had sent similar messages in the past. And that's so true. Ian Blackford and others have sent out messages which are really quite vicious, really, saying don't come to Scotland, because these people are too stupid to realise that the Scottish economy depends upon tourism, okay? At least it depends upon tourism for everybody coming up once until they discover the midges. But it depends a lot on tourism. And if you don't have Scottish tourism from the rest of the United Kingdom, then everything above the Forth Clyde line is going to suffer very badly. So we need tourism in Scotland to keep this economy going. But the SNP are too stupid to even understand that. So they'll put out messages which essentially frighten away the people that we need to keep our economy going. And you know, yesterday, the 10th of July, was the day in 138 AD when Hadrian died. Now, Hadrian built this wall across It lies within England, and he built that wall across there. And if the SNP could, they would rebuild it, metaphorically speaking. And they're already rebuilding Hadrian's Wall in the minds of some people who are looking on and thinking, goodness me, what a shower of numpties are running Scotland at the moment. And you know what? Why haven't the BLM people taken down Hadrian's Wall? Because Hadrian must have been like a slave owner, or I don't know. I'm sure he was complicit in some way with slavery. So surely you should be taking down Hadrian's Wall. Again, I don't want to give these people ideas. I don't want to give them ideas because they're silly enough to action it. Richard says, British comedy gold from the fringes of the SNP. True enough. Someone says, try stopping me from coming up to the land of my father to visit my family and friends. Never. Quite well said. Just come up anytime you want, you know. Come up anytime you want. Robert says something about that. Freedom for Britain. Absolutely. I agree with you, Robert. I'll just ignore the rest of his message. So, here's what I want to talk about now. Oh my goodness me. Our wee book for the Union. Amazing day in British Unionist history when yesterday we received and we made open for sale our wee book for the Union. Our wee book for the Union. Now the words will be reversed if you're looking on Facebook, but if you're looking on Twitter, they should be the correct way up. Now this is a perfect bound 56-page pocket book. So this can fit in your back pocket. The size is called A6. And as you will see, we're basing that upon the Keep Calm and Carry On classic poster with our trademark red, postbox red colour. And in this is 56 pages of wisdom. Now, we've done it in such a way that half of it is pictures. So every page has 2 pictures. Every 2 pages is 2 pics. And about half of the pictures are AFFG pictures, full colour, and the other half are ones for which we have got full copyright authority to use. And it's divided into 4 parts. The past, how we came together. The present, benefits of the UK today. The debate, exposing the indie myths. And the future, making a better Britain. And if we can put up the link to that, you can get it in our shop on our website. And it's £5, including postage. And we'll get that straight off to you. And we sold we sold a lot last night after we started advertising it. So this is the first print run, and I'm thinking we're probably going to run out of the first print run by the end of this week. The rate at which it is selling. So there's been nothing like it before. Now, if you're looking for a wee book that talks about statistics and prices and numbers and so on, you're not going to find it here. We don't. That's not our style. There are people who are much better at doing that, and these statistics change every day anyway. What you'll find in here is a story about the United Kingdom and how it has come about since the dawn of time, since 5,000 years ago at least. And we make reference to that, how our social and cultural unions came about in the midst of time. To read from Ancient Roots of Union. In his BBC series Britain's Ancient Capital, archaeologist Neil Oliver stated Orkney was, quote, the origin of the first united culture of Britain, thousands of years before the United Kingdom came into being, close quote. The Ness of Brodgar, settled some 5,000 years ago, was, quote, the beating heart, the beginning, the capital, the wellspring of Britain's very first common culture. And so that's what we're basing the wee book on. We start there and we go through the common culture, the common social bonds, the unifying of the kingdoms, then the political union, to where we are today, where we can talk about the United Kingdom being a nation of unions and not just a family of nations, but quite literally a nation of families. So this is a story. Obviously, we run through it very fast. There's only 56 pages, but we ensure that every page has got lots of wee hidden gems and knowledge. And it's the sort of thing you can say, oh, I like that, I'm going to use that down the pub, or I'm going to say that to my mate because that's a convincing point, or whatever. So there's lots of wee bits in there. And if you get a copy of this, please do give us some feedback, because we can always improve on this and we can always add to this. This is the first edition, July 2020. And so please do give us some feedback, but please do go to aforceforgood.uk. And if you look along the top, you'll see shop, click on that and you'll see this for sale. And it's selling very fast, and it might even be sold out by the end of today. So please bang in your order there as soon as possible. We will, of course, be doing a second print run, but somebody says, excellent read. The dedication at the back is perfect for a great British patriot. That's correct. We dedicated the book to a couple of valued colleagues, loved colleagues who are no longer with us. Aye, good. Give you a wave, Mike. Give you a wave, Jamie. There you go. Force for Good, a wee book for the Union. There, the link is in the Facebook comment thread now. And so, yeah, it's a story. And it's a story, and it takes us through ancient roots of union, the union of the crowns, how the Union Jack came together, the Covenanters, the Glorious Revolution. These are two areas that modern people never hear about, but are absolutely critical to Scotland's development towards union. The Union of 1707, Empire, Commonwealth, and then NHS, welfare state, and the post-war consensus. And then we look into the benefits of the United Kingdom today: a stronger economy, our leading role as Scots in union, our social union, our shared British identity, great British institutions, and our global influence. And then we expose the indie myths, why Britain is a nation, the British Parliament represents us all, Scotland is not more progressive than England. We speak about oil and related fantasy figures and why Scotland can't be independent in the EU. And then we look into making a better Britain. We talk about our journey towards a more perfect union. And then we put in 23 policies to strengthen the union. And we summarise it by saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Sail on, O ship of British state, sail on, O Union, strong and great, for humanity with all its fears, with all its hopes for future years, is hanging breathless on thy fate. And believe us when we say, we, the men and women of A Force for Good, will stay the course for the Union we so love. So please support our work. Please get yourself a copy of the wee book, and if you can, if you like what we're doing, go to aforceforgood.uk/support and put in your name and your email, and that will help us to develop a relationship with you. And if you want this wee badge, which is a direct copy of that badge, then again go to our shop on our website and you can get that wee badge, which is also selling very well. And if we can put the link to that in the comments also. Fantastic, fantastic. And Laura says, you talk more sense than any of the politicians. Scotland is chasing people away. I, for one, would never give Nicola the time of day. If the United Kingdom split, we are doomed. Yeah, we are. We're in a bad way. But, you know, we won't stop fighting. We won't stop fighting. We will continue to stand. But that's not going to happen. But if it did, you know, we're not going away. That's what the Scottish nationalists fail to realise. They think we're just going to roll over and we're going to go, oh yeah, okay then, the people voted for it. In a one-off, one-day vote, they won by 48 votes, and we'll just accept that. No. We're not accepting the United Kingdom being broken up, because the world cannot have the United Kingdom broken up. That's the thing. The world cannot have it. As we said there, humanity, with all its fears, with all its hopes for future years, is hanging breathless on our fate here in the United Kingdom. That's how we like to summarise it. Graham from Bradford, good for you. May, keep up the good work. Brian says, wonderful, long live the Union. Does Wales feature in the United Kingdom? It absolutely does, absolutely. And we're always looking for. We've produced this from a Scottish looking out perspective, but it'd be really good if there are people in Northern Ireland or Wales to consider the Union from a Welsh or Northern Irish looking out perspective as well. And I know some of them do, and let's get together and let's add stuff like that into other editions perhaps, or other booklets. But now that we've got this one booklet, we know how to do this, and we can just be banging these out. Graham says, cheers. Somebody there says, we need to redevelop industrial power. That's so true. That's so true. This infrastructure, the Boris New Deal, so-called, it really needs to develop manufacturing, especially the kind of manufacturing which Britain is good at, so that it can create quality jobs and it can create wealth that will come in, and that will help to pay off the debt which is going to accumulate. So only through building up infrastructure and building up manufacturing can we build up the wealth again. Otherwise, growth is only being sustained at the moment via the importation of people. And we're going to speak about that. We're actually working on an article in infrastructure at the moment where we're going to show how for the last 20 years or so the United Kingdom has based its policy simply on importing people in order to create growth in the economy, which is a false way of doing it. We have to create genuine physical wealth in our country, which we can do under the right leadership. Give Marie a wave there. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. I said something last week which wasn't quite correct. It was correct, but it wasn't fully correct, and I'm just going to correct it right now. I said last week that Britain's first non-white MP had been elected in 1892. That was not quite correct. That was the first Asian MP in 1892. I looked further into it, and in fact the first non-white was elected in 1832, and his name was John Stuart. He was half white actually, but he's considered the first black MP in the United Kingdom. His name was John Stuart, and guess what? Okay, the first black MP in the United Kingdom owned slaves. Okay. He owned at least 3 slave plantations. And he owned plantations in Grenada and in Demerara, of sugar fame, in British Guiana, and also in Antigua on the South1824 coastal areas. So, and he served in Parliament for between 1832 to 1847, so 15 years in Parliament, the first non-white. So it was even earlier than I had said last week. And talking about this week in British history, today is the 11th of July, which is actually the day that the Battle of the Boyne was fought, which is a huge battle, of course, which is commemorated mainly in Northern Ireland and the central belt of Scotland. And it was a decisive battle which, to a large extent, changed the course of British history. It wasn't the last battle to be fought in the Glorious Revolution, but it was a major one. And people often say, oh, the Glorious Revolution was a peaceful revolution. Well, no, it wasn't. If you look at it, it was anything but. There was a lot of conflict, especially in Ireland, on this matter, the Jacobites versus the troops of William and Mary. Now, some people will say, oh, I thought it was the 12th of July was the Battle of the Boyne. Well, here's an interesting point. The Battle of the Boyne was actually fought on the 1st of July, 1690. If you use the old style calendar, which was called the Julian calendar, if you use the Gregorian calendar, which it changed to, it was the 11th of July. And on the 12th of July, old style, in 1691, was the Battle of Aughrim. Aughrim. And that was the focus. The Battle of Aughrim was the focus of British loyalist celebrations in Ireland on the 12th of July, up until the beginning of the 1800s, shortly after the calendar had changed. And thereafter it was superseded in the public consciousness by the Battle of the Boyne, whenever you commemorated the 12th. But, so, interesting kind of date thing going on. The changes of history from Julian to Gregorian calendars can really be quite infuriating. But we will explain that in a post that we'll make tomorrow for the Battle of Aughrim on the 12th of July. But the constitutional consequences of the Glorious Revolution, of course, were massive. And it was essentially the Williamite Protestants became victorious over the Catholic forces of James VII. And this helped to secure a new constitutional relationship throughout the British Isles, which was written down in the Bill of Rights in England and in Scotland in something called the Claim of Right. And these are recognised as representing the basis of our modern day civil and religious liberties. And it was furthermore the determination to maintain the Protestant succession which helped to lead to the 1707 Union of Parliaments, where the Scots were very keen to ensure a Protestant successor for the throne of Great Britain. And without these decisive battles won back in that period, the consequences, which are still felt today, of course, in certain parts of Ireland, it's unlikely that the Parliamentary Union would have happened in 1707, because Great Britain would have been too riven with religious strife. The Scottish Protestants would not have accepted James VII, and they would have looked on England as essentially a Catholic country, and they would not have come together. But it was only because of the William and Mary Glorious Revolution that Scotland could come together with a Protestant England. And so that's a fascinating period, and we don't hear much about that these days because, of course, it's also slightly controversial because of its religious connotations, but it's absolutely crucial to understanding our union today, and we do speak about that here. We do speak about that here in the Covenanters and the Glorious Revolution, and that's a picture of Charles II, who was King of Great Britain. You know, they say, oh, Britain was a republic. Well, technically not really, because the Scots announced that Charles II would be King of all Great Britain shortly after Charles I got his head cut off. And that statue stands in Parliament Square in Edinburgh. And that's the mural of William and Mary on the painted hall ceiling of the Royal Naval College, which you can no doubt get to see once it opens up again. So what else on this day? This week, 13th of July, was Live Aid. 72,000 people there. If you want to know what 72,000 people looks like, all under one banner, Scottish Nationalists, have a look at the footage from that day. That was 72,000 people, okay? Doesn't come close to your rallies. And that was opened by the regimental band of the Coldstream Guards, playing God Save the Queen, which was immediately followed by Status Quo playing Rocking All Over the World. So musically, it would be very difficult to top that in my humble opinion. The 15th of July, coming up this week, is when Napoleon surrendered and Pax Britannica began. Pax Britannica is Latin for British peace, and he surrendered on a boat down in the English Channel on 15th of July 1815, and for the next 100 years Britain essentially policed the world and kept it in as good order as we possibly could until the peace was of course shattered by the beginning of the Great War. On the 17th of July in 1845, Charles Grey, the reforming Prime Minister, he died. He is especially known for the Reform Acts, which extended the franchise to many more people throughout the United Kingdom, in England and Wales, in Scotland and in Ireland as well. And he has a massive statue at the top of, in the centre of Newcastle, that great pillar that's at the top of the street in Newcastle. That's Charles Grey at the top of that. He's also famous for having a tea named after him, Earl Grey tea. And he also is the Prime Minister who oversaw the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833. So that was the act which abolished the practice of slavery in the United Kingdom. And is that going to be enough to get him off the hate list of everybody who hates people who have got statues? No. Well, he actually abolished slavery, mate. Oh yeah, he's still complicit. I don't have time to go into that foolishness. So, ladies and gentlemen, do give us a wee buy this book. It's probably going to be sold out by this evening, and I'm not joking when I say that. So get in there straight away. Go to aforceforgood.uk and click on shop and get your wee book. It's only a £5. It's only a £5, and you will have a piece of history. A piece of history. Also go to aforceforgood.uk/support and put in your name and email address, and you'll be able to stay in touch with us. Thanks for your comments, Lee. Yeah, they've been much appreciated. I've been noticing them. I haven't been able to read them all out. But he's saying the SNP don't want to accept the Act of Unification. They think it never happened. Absolutely. They think we were forced into it. Not at all. That's their narrative. That's their story. But it's complete nonsense. And they have to make up stuff. You know, as we said here when we spoke about Scotland being is not more progressive than England. They cannot claim that our culture or identity is that our Scottish culture is under threat. Instead, they claim that our values are so different to people in England that separation is the only way to protect them. And so they'll try to pretend that Scotland is more progressive than England, but that's simply not borne out by the facts, as we point out here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. The hour has gone so fast, as always. I'm going to say thank you so much for all the support, especially the people who helped make the wee book a real thing. You know who you are. You helped get that first print run off the presses, and I'm so grateful to you all for that. Thank you for watching on Facebook. Thank you for watching on Twitter. And I just want to say, God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen.